So let's go on now here. We're going to go to, well, we're going to still stay in the state of Texas, if I can make this work. Okay. Hi, Sarah. Can you hear me? Sarah?
Yes, I can.
Okay. How may I help you today?
Okay, so I just got out of a 6-month high conflict divorce with children, and me and my husband realized we both want to reconcile, and we're in couples counseling, but he's denying that he ever did anything wrong. He's basically denying he's had an emotional affair, but he still wants me to tell him what I need him to do, but should I believe him if he's not even being honest?
How do you know that he's not being honest?
Because he's denying everything, even things he said before that were, and admitting that he did something and that the other girl likes him and has, been after him.
Okay. And so you have his words, his own language. He's the one that told you that he was involved with the other woman. Is that correct?
He admitted that she likes him, and I've seen things, from us hanging out because it's a relative's wife, and basically he always mistreats me around her and after she leaves.
Okay.
And it led to some very serious things, yeah.
Okay. Is she still involved and is she still around?
Yeah, we're still separate. We're not living together yet. We still haven't made that jump, but he moved closer to her.
Okay. So he's saying he wants to reconcile with you, but he moved so he can be closer in locality to her. Now, is that move?
Yeah, she's married with children as well.
Okay. And so do you know for a fact that he moved closer to her to be closer to her, or is there any other factor that could have been involved in that decision to make that move?
There are other factors.
Okay. And so he's saying to you that he does not have an emotional connection to her.
Right.
Okay. Now, you say you don't believe him, yet I guess what I'm trying to find out this. You don't believe him because of things he said earlier, but did he ever say that he was emotionally on his side connected to her?
No, he's never admitted it.
Okay. And so you're basing this primarily on the way he treats you. So you're basing this based on the way he treats you when she's around.
In front of her and indirect admissions.
Okay.
Like he's told me she's a better wife in the middle of like a random blow up, and he's always wanting to spend time with her and at her house instead of going out with me. There's a lot of things, and he actually divorced me over her as well because I quote unquote doubted him, and I was kind of keeping him away from her.
Okay, so here's my question. Are you willing to continue in the potential reconciliation if he doesn't get honest, in the way you phrase it, about what he feels toward her?
Yes, as long as it, progress, actually starts to end. I know it doesn't happen overnight, but as long as it does gradually end.
Okay. Well,
it's like a limerence.
It could be. I mean, it obviously could be. Here's a couple of things to recommend. When he denies that he's emotionally connected with her, understand that from his perspective, he may be telling the truth. Let me explain what I mean by that. Even if he is emotionally connected to her, if he's not admitting it to himself, in other words, it's there, it exists, and you see demonstrations of it, but he himself is not willing to admit it to himself. If that's the case, then he would say to you, no, and he would be telling the truth based on his perspective. Like, if he won't admit it to himself, then he's not going to admit it to anybody else. On the other hand, when you talk about emotional connection, there's a possibility that how he is measuring that is different from how you're measuring that. And so from your standpoint, the way you think about an emotional connection, you're thinking, yeah, you're doing it, but maybe, and I'm saying it's the case, I'm giving you possibilities, there's a possibility that the way he measures it in his head, he's not really emotionally connected to her. Not meaning that he isn't, but that he visualizes that or sees that differently. So the real point comes down to the question I just asked. And what I heard you say was this. You said, well, if he will reduce his interaction with her, in other words, if she goes out of the picture, then you are willing to reconcile. That's what I heard you say. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Is he clear on that? Have you explained that so that he really understands what that means?
Yes, that's all I've been saying, but I think he's also trying to say that because she's a relative's wife, that there are going to be instances where we still see her, like weddings and whatnot, and he just says those are out of his control.
And those kind of things may be out of his control, but that's not what I hear you talking about. It's not whether or not you bump into each other at a wedding. What I'm hearing you say is that you want it very evidently clear that you are the woman in his life, the woman he wants to be with, and not anybody else, specifically and including her. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so if the two of you can somehow figure out how to do that, how to measure that, where, okay, yes, we may bump into her at a wedding, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is I have to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that I am the person that you want to be with. I'm the person that you love. Now, it might be very difficult to be able to identify that, but unless you do, then there's going to always be a point of you're saying, well, you violated it, and him saying, I didn't violate it, until you can find some definitive way to describe it. Like, okay, let's write down this. If you have contact with her other than if we accidentally bump into her, I'm going to see that as a negative. If you, in other words, you can write a few things like that and then come to a conclusion, and this is what I need from you. It has to do with what we call stops and cores. Stops are those things that safeguards that offer protection. In other words, that emotionally protect you. And then cores are continuing our relationship essentials, that this is what I need from you. Now, the problem is, on a brief phone call like this, I can't really help you do that. Forgive me for sounding like a commercial, but what you may want to consider is calling our office and asking about working with one of our coaches. A coach could help you think these things through and write these things down, because what's really important, Sarah, is that you don't make it so restrictive that it becomes impossible for him. And so it's kind of an art to it. It's more of an art than a science about how do we set these cores and these stops. And if you can get those clear enough at least, so that we can feel safe, emotionally safe, that I'm the woman he wants to be with. This is what he's focusing on. It's not her anymore, that she's out of the emotional picture. There's a way to do that. It's just I don't know how to tell you how to do that in a short conversation like this on the phone, on the air here. But you can do that if you contact one of our coaches, and they can help you figure that out. Now, if you don't want to coach one of our coaches, you might want to consider a counselor. If you choose a counselor where you live, make sure that he or she is pro-marriage. Make sure that he or she is not going to do something that makes you wind up setting criteria and stops and cores that he can't do. Because if that happens, you're not going to put it back together.